come in with the same motivation.
To find
the person who did, whether it's a murder, a kidnapping, a sexual assault, whatever it is, people are motivated to solve the case, and they usually work together relatively well.
Okay, so let's say this. I'm a loyal listener. I've listened to the podcast. I've decided I want to go out and kill my wife. So I decide I'm going to show up, and I'm going to be so distraught. And I burst through the crime into the room, past whatever cop is there. I'm all distraught, and I put my arms around the person I've just murdered.
Yeah.
I'm just, and so now I've got her blood and my all over myself, and my DNA's all over. Is that a good move for me as a would-be killer?
Well, in any domestic homicide, whether it be husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, obviously the first suspect.
Right.
Unless you're out of state or out of the country or locked up, the first suspect is the significant other of the person who was found dead. And that's where they start their little inner circle and they work out.
Right. But
so regardless of what you do at the crime scene,
but
you're still a suspect.
If I'm at the crime scene and they can see how distraught I am, and if they say there's DNA all over her, but he was hugging her,
well, she's your wife. She should have your DNA all over her.
Not a lot of marriages I know.
So that kind of goes to like evidence. What type of evidence? What type of evidence do they have at a crime scene? And there's a lot, but your typical is like blood, hair, fluid, fingerprints, weapons, tire marks, digital evidence, whether it be a neighbor's Ring recorder. You can get video and audio from the area and stuff like that, and cell phones.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of places to get evidence out there. So there's usually not a crime scene typically where there's not some evidence, like no evidence at all, like just a random occurrence, which we're going to kind of get into. Those are the hardest one.
I can actually give you one, though.
What's that?
Because I just saw this on TV, of all places. Body gets moved.
Oh, it gets to a secondary location.
Yeah.
Person gets killed in a house. Yep. They put the body in a car and drive it to the woods of Maine. Just dump it on the side of the road.
Oh,
yeah, no evidence.
Great idea, except for the car. Except for the car,
tire tracks, or if they see the car going through a toll booth at 3 a.m.
Yeah, the DNA. Oh, good point. The DNA in the body.
Yeah,
all these things.
Those are hard things to figure out. The less evidence you have, and the situation where someone would have a really big outer circle of associates. But we're going to kind of get into that. But before we get into that, what you usually do at any crime scene, once you secure it and get all your evidence, now the next thing you look for is means, opportunity, and motive, MOM. So the first is means. How did the person die? Now, if you look at a domestic situation, you might look at a strangulation. Someone gets strangled.
Very personal way to die.
Very personal way to die. So if someone's strangled or choked from behind, or there's some sort of a rope around their neck and they didn't hang themselves, who would do that? That's very personal. A serial killer does that, but also a distraught husband or wife or boyfriend would do that.
Yeah.
So when you look at that, a gun, one gunshot in comparison to 10 gunshot wounds, 10 would mean very personal. They have a real hatred for the person that was shot, so they just unloaded a clip on them. Someone who was stabbed one time in comparison to being stabbed 50 times.
Right.
Big difference.
Oh, I know.
Absolutely.
Oh, wait a minute. I've 50 times. One time is a pro. 50 times is 50 times is somebody who's
a distraught, psychotic lover.
Really, really, really freaking out.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But now let me ask you this. If I'm a serial killer, it could be either.
Yeah, serial killers are usually, a serial killer is known for their strangulation or their very up and close and personal killing of an individual.
And they're also well plotted, and they're
usually very organized offenders. Very organized. They think it out. They have every step covered. They know the certain person they're going to get. They'll surveil the area and the person they're looking to murder or sexually assault or kidnap.
You know,
you don't strike me as that person, Dave, because you're very unorganized.
I'd never be a good serial killer. I'd be like, look, take a look at my writing. The penmanship is large. It's not small, neat handwriting on a notebook. It's messy. I could never be a psychopathic murderer.
And the next thing you go for is, go ahead, David.
Here's what I got. My book that I'm writing about the serial killer and the string of serial killings that are solved by the cop and his podcast buddy. My killer is a serial killer who finds husbands unhappy with their wives, kills the women, and pins it on the husbands.
That's not a bad one. That's a good one.
You. I've been thinking about that one. Don't anybody take that, because that's mine.
So the next thing you look for is opportunity. Who had the opportunity to do it? So if you look for like a young child that's gone missing, a 6-year-old child, no one had the opportunity to do that. So you definitely look at the parents for that, because who leaves a young child unattended?
These
no
days.
one does.
Right.
No one does. In comparison to like a 15-year-old girl who might go missing or might be found deceased or something like that, then she has a larger network of potential suspects through social media, through school, boyfriends, whatever the case may be. So once you look at who has the opportunity, the next step is motive. Without a motive, many crimes will never be solved, because if there's no reason why a person is deceased, if it's not a domestic situation, if it's not a kidnapping, if it's not like some sort of a gang shooting, which we're going to go over here shortly, then if you don't have that, then who did it? Why is the person deceased?
Right.
So those are the hardest crimes to solve, motiveless type crimes. And you'll see a motiveless type crime with just some deranged maniac.
Right.
Just like we're going to talk about the case where the young girl in Los Angeles working in the furniture store was murdered. And basically, what's the motive there? There is no known motive other than just a deranged street person with mental health issues probably fantasized about killing her.
Right.
And that's the only motive they have. And it's not an obvious motive.
And you're talking about the 6-year-old girl. I mean, that's
the missing 6-year-old girl.
Yeah, if the 6-year-old girl's
from New
missing,
Hampshire, right? A girl from New Hampshire.
Yeah. Oh, that's the one you were thinking of? I was thinking of just in general. But that's an excellent, that's an excellent one.
Yeah, opportunity. I mean, the parents have the opportunity.
The parents have the opportunity. But, if a 6-year-old walks away from you in the mall, if the 6-year-old walks away from you in the park, let's put it this way, if you're
a bad parent and you don't watch your kid,
even if you're a good parent, you might lose your kid once in a while. But if you're a bad parent, you probably lose it more. You never lost your kid in the crowd.
Never.
Really?
Ever.
I'm with my daughter. We threw out the first pitch for the Lowell Spinners, and I'm wearing a blue shirt with khaki shorts, and she's yay high, like 2.5 feet high, maybe 2.5 feet high, whatever. She's tiny. She's with me on the concourse, and I look and she's gone, and I look across the concourse, and there she is following another man my size with khaki shirts.
Oh, there you go.
And a blue shirt and khaki pants.
Wow.
Khaki shorts. And it was no big deal, but it's the sort of thing as a parent, you've always got to be vigilant about that. I know with you probably put your kids on leashes and stuff like that.
I did. Absolutely.
But I've seen kids, and I've had a situation where you sit under you're out the park, and you're like, yeah, go play with the other kids, and then all of a sudden you got to look around, you got to say, well, all right, where's the kid in the mauve jacket? But you're saying anyone who lets the child out of their
a 5, 6, 7-year-old kid, and the parent says, I don't know where my kid is. I haven't seen him in 2 years. I mean, they're lying, and they kill the kid.
That's awful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. But so you're telling every responsible parent who's listening to the podcast, and why would they if they were responsible?
Yeah.
But you would say, if you lose your kid even for a millisecond, you're a bad parent.
I wouldn't say that. That's yet the cause of death. Now, there's only 4 causes of death. People can be shot, car accidents, stuff like that, but the basic cause of death, you either die of natural causes.
Yep.
So as an investigator, when they go to a crime scene or what they believe may be a crime scene, they have to determine, did the person die of natural causes? Was it an accident, i.e. a car accident, a slip and fall, or something like that?
Uh-huh.
Was it a suicide?
Yep.
Was it a gunshot suicide? Was it a hanging suicide? Was it a drug overdose suicide?
Yep.
And the least likely scenario would be a homicide.
The least likely.
Most likely cause of death, Dave, is going to be natural causes. The least likely is a homicide.
It's funny, we lost somebody who was a friend, and his we were all, when we heard about it, we all thought it was COVID. And when somebody talked to his wife and said, no, she just found him in the bathroom. Yep. She just found him in the bathroom. They didn't know how they died, and I don't think they really even determined the cause of death. It was just he was.
Well, usually when you do a crime scene, the younger the person that is found deceased.
Yep.
An 80-year-old lady that's found deceased in a home, it's going to be handled a little differently than an 18-year-old girl found deceased in a home, because the 80-year-old lady, more likely than not, would be natural causes. Now, the 18-year-old girl found in a home, it's any one of the four. Absolutely any one of the four.
But it was interesting to me that she didn't know. Now, maybe these people were...
How old was the individual?
They were in their 70s.
Yep.
About maybe 70s. Could have been in their 60s. Hard to say. Yeah, and they were maybe...
I'm sure they went there with the crime scene people, and they determined, they did an autopsy. They interviewed the person who found the deceased individual.
Yep.
And cops can go into certain scenes and they can make a determination, just a general determination based on what they see and based on their experience, if something looks suspicious right off the bat.
Yeah.
So it all depends on what they saw. But yeah, an autopsy usually will give investigators a place to start.
Okay.
It'll exclude certain things and it'll include certain things.
Every time you find a dead body, do you set up a crime scene?
I would say unless you go to a house where there is a cancer patient or something like that, and there's a do not resuscitate, and someone goes out,
right,
and then they come back and they find their 90-year-old father deceased, that wouldn't be a crime scene, no. But young children, a 50-year-old guy who's found dead in the bed, yeah, you're going to treat it as a crime scene. You're going to secure it. You're going to call in the appropriate people, and they're going to do an investigation.
So in this case, seemingly happily married couple. I don't know. I'm not sure if they were even married. The woman calls. She's distraught. My boyfriend or my husband, whatever, is just lying on the floor. He was just lying on the floor, dead. When I got here, are they going to come in? They're going to crime scene that?
Yeah, absolutely. They're gonna absolutely crime scene that.
Really? Okay.
Sure they are.
Where does the woman sleep that night?
It all depends on. It doesn't take 3 days. It all depends on. Every crime scene or every death situation or every potential death situation has to be looked at its own merits.
Okay.
There's no blanket way to do crime scenes. Everyone has to be dealt with differently. The officer and the investigators have to look at the situation and work their way outward and see what's going on in the relationship. What's the evidence telling us? What's the condition of the body telling us? What are the forensic experts? Sometimes they'll actually bring a pathologist to the scene before they remove the body, and he or she can sometimes make determinations on what happened that the average investigator, state police investigator, local investigator isn't going to know, because he or she's going to see medical type evidence that the average person is not going to know.
So in my case, as you know, I have one child. I have a daughter.
Yep.
And eventually, as you probably suspect, I think we know that at some point she's going to smother me with a pillow when I'm sleeping. So I guess the question is, so you're saying really her best bet is to wait for me to get a little older.
Yeah.
And then there's less likely to be.
If you're like about 75, 76, and you're a little frail, you're frail at 62, so 75 and 76 should be a lot frail. So you can very easily slip down the
I was frail at 38.
Basement stairs easily.
Okay. All right.
With she might have a big footprint on your back. Her footprint might be on your back.
So wait, you're telling me that she's going to smother me with a pillow, then she's going to pick me up, and then she's going to throw me down the stairs?
All depends how devious the young lad is.
Well, she's pretty devious. But all right, good.
So now that you have all this knowledge, Dave, we're going to look at a couple of crime scenes or a couple of death scenes that have occurred very recently in the news, and we're going to kind of go over them. And the first one was in Inglewood, California.
Yep.
Just the other day, 4 people were shot and killed in an ambush attack at a house party at around 1:30 in the morning. So I kind of read into that a little bit, and they said that one of the individuals, 5 people were shot, 4 have died, but one of the people that survived allegedly said that he was a gang member. As an investigator, your first thought is this has to be some sort of a gang-related hit, whether it's a payback, whether it's a drug deal gone bad, whether it's a rival, Crips and the Bloods, whatever gang it may be. So my first opinion on that's an easy case to solve, because when you deal with gang members and people in the criminal element, there's always a deal to be made. Someone out there knows who did this. Now that person...
If it's a gang shooting.
If it's a gang shooting, someone knows.
Yeah.
And someone may have just been arrested a month ago and is looking to do 5 to 10 years for drug activity, drug possession. That guy could come forward and tell the investigators, hey, I know what gang member did that. I know the car they were driving, and I know the type of gun they used. you get rid of my drug charges, I'll give you the name. They'll make a deal with that person. They absolutely will make
Right.
a